Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com. When I first started doing this 15 years ago, I had to put some effort into finding things to write about. But the volume of disinformation from the press is coming so fast and furious now, it's almost impossible to keep up. Like this article from Yahoo News, Summer of Historic Climate Change Impacts Draws to a Close. This summer once again proved a busy time for climate reporters and a dangerous one for those who are vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, including extreme heat, drought, wildfires, severe rainfall events, and hurricanes. Even before the official first day of summer, temperatures were breaking records across much of the western United States. An unusually hot spring combined with an ongoing megadrought in the parched southwest brought raging wildfires to New Mexico in April. So what they're doing is they're attributing every weather event and fire to the burning of fossil fuels. Let's start by looking at the raging wildfires in New Mexico in April. The Hermit's Peak fire was located in the Santa Fe National Forest, where I worked as a ranger 40 years ago. According to the press, it was the largest wildfire in New Mexico history. Let's see how the United States Forest Service described the Hermit's Peak fire. The Hermit's Peak fire began on April 6 as a result of a prescribed fire on the Pecos, Las Vegas Ranger District of the Santa Fe National Forest. In other words, the fire was started by the U.S. government and got out of control. But Yahoo News says that a fire started by the U.S. government is proof of climate change. This woman has been supervisor of the Santa Fe National Forest since April of 2021. After 1 year on the job, she started the largest wildfire in New Mexico history. And she was rewarded for doing this by being given a promotion to a permanent job in Washington, D.C. The Biden administration must be very happy with her because she started a fire which gave them the ability to create lots of global warming propaganda. But let's go back to Yahoo News. They say there's an ongoing megadrought in the parched Southwest. This map shows rainfall in the Southwest since the middle of June. It was one of the wettest summers on record in the Southwest, with parts of New Mexico and Arizona receiving more than 20 inches of rain. Some parts of New Mexico and Arizona received over the last 3 months almost as much rain as they normally receive in an entire year. But Yahoo News describes this record rainfall as being an ongoing mega drought. As far as forest fires go, burn acreage in the United States this year has been about half of the average over the past century and down more than 80% from 90 years ago. Burn acreage in the United States over the last 2 months has been the lowest in at least a decade. August-September burn acreage is down about 80% from 10 years ago. This isn't surprising because it's been very wet in the Southwest. There are currently no fires burning in Arizona, New Mexico, or Colorado, which is pretty remarkable for this time of year. Things weren't always this good in Colorado, though. At the end of September 1898, the New York Times reported that almost the entire northwest quadrant of Colorado was on fire. In fact, there were vast fires burning in both Wisconsin and Colorado at that time. Earlier in 1898, one of the largest wildfires in U.S. history struck South Carolina. Right after Valentine's Day in February, 3 million acres of forest in South Carolina burned in just over 24 hours. That fire was during the winter. But this year, Yahoo News blamed a fire in April started by the United States Forest Service on climate change. It's not difficult to imagine the hysteria from the press if we had another huge fire in February like we did in 1898. The February 1898 fire was about 10 times larger than the April fire in New Mexico this year. And at the same time in 1898, when the fires were burning in South Carolina, Tasmania was also having some of their largest forest fires on record. There was a worldwide heat wave and drought going on which killed 19 million people in India and 10 million people in China. During the summer of 1898, Oregon set their all-time temperature record of 119 degrees. And the amazing thing was it didn't just happen once, it actually happened twice during the summer of 1898. During September 1898, New York City had a deadly heat wave which killed 50 people in just 1 day. In April of 1898, California was having a terrible drought which was forcing ranchers to move the cattle away from the coast. In November of 1898, the island of St. Vincent was completely destroyed by a hurricane. It was the second time St. Vincent was destroyed by a hurricane. The first one was 1780, which was the deadliest Atlantic hurricane on record. The New York Times wrote, "Results in the island of St. Vincent worse than reported. Whole country swept bare. Distress of the people described as exceeding that caused by the Great Famine in India." And if you remember, 19 million people died in that famine in India. A few months earlier, a typhoon and tidal wave in the Philippines killed 7,000 people and destroyed the city of Tacloban. 9 years ago, Tacloban was hit by a similar typhoon which killed 6,000 people, which of course the press blamed on climate change. Had the press done any actual research, they would have known that there were fewer deaths in the 2013 typhoon than there were in 1898. And in 1912, Tacloban was again destroyed by a typhoon which killed 17,000 people. The press doesn't do any actual research, they simply blame all weather events on climate change, meaning the burning of fossil fuels. The United States has not been hit by any hurricanes so far this year, but in 1886 the United States was hit by 7. 4 hurricanes hit Texas and 3 hurricanes hit Florida. 2 locations in the United States were hit by 2 hurricanes that same year in 1886. There's a good chance that next week Florida will get hit by a hurricane, which the press will of course blame on climate change. Let's look at a few more statistics before I wrap this up. This summer was very quiet for fires in the United States, and it was also extremely quiet for tornadoes. The number of tornadoes in the United States this year has been well below average. The average daily maximum temperature in the United States so far this year has also been well below average. The percent of days above 90 degrees Fahrenheit has been slightly above average, but nothing like the 1930s. The percent of days above 60 degrees Fahrenheit has been the 11th lowest on record so far this year. And the percent of nights below 20 degrees Fahrenheit has been the 5th highest on record. Here in Wyoming, we had a ridiculously long, cold winter, which was reflected in the very high number of nights below 20 degrees Fahrenheit. We got almost no warm weather before the end of May. But Yahoo News says the West was really hot in April. If it was so hot and dry, we might ask the question, why was the United States Forest Service starting fires? And why was this woman given a promotion by the Biden administration after starting the largest wildfire in New Mexico history? Had a Forest Service employee done that 40 years ago when I was a ranger in that district, they certainly would have been fired and likely would have been prosecuted as well. It seems that the press never discusses any real issues anymore. Instead, we have climate reporters like Ben Adler generating non-stop fake news in an effort to demonize low-cost, reliable energy. Toto wonders who's paying the press to misinform the public about energy and climate. You can visit Toto, Kyrie, Caesar, Toki, and Upla on the web at realclimatescience.com.